This is John W. Whitehead, author of Battlefield America, The War on the American People, bringing you a message about the state of our nation. One of the things I learned as a young lawyer working in and out of Washington, D.C., and I've been working at it for 40 years, suing politicians in Washington, D.C., working with groups there. One of the things I was actually told by early congressmen and consultants is, John, you have to understand, Washington, D.C. is not really run by elected officials. It's run by bureaucrats, the contractors, the surveillance communities, the police agencies, and of course over the years that's actually grown now to where you have the Department of Homeland Security, which came into being after 9/11, the massive NSA, CIA operations that are spying on everything Americans do. Nothing is private anymore. That's being realized. What we call the government in Washington, D.C. is really not the government. In other words, when you vote and you elect someone, you're not really electing the government that runs things. There's a deeper government there. It's something which has been called the deep state or the shadow government. In fact, since the early days after World War II, there's been a continuity of government, which is called COG, of unelected officials who will supposedly take over the government and run it if the government breaks down, if there's a war or some kind of catastrophe, an economic collapse, which many people are fearing now. This so-called continuity of government, again, not elected officials, we don't know who they are, will run the government. The problem as I see it, as I research this issue more and more, is that how they view us as the American citizens. In fact, I think they view us as cattle or very expendable. In fact, one of the most troubling things I've seen emerge, and this is all documented by stories in the mainstream media, Washington Post and others, are these so-called secret bunkers that are located around the United States for the so-called elite, the economic elite and government elite, to escape into in a time of crisis. These bunkers, strategically located around the nation's capital and key states, represent the who's who on the shadow government's payroll, with every department agency represented, from the Department of Education to the Trademark Office to the Small Business Administration to the National Archives. Nobody's overlooked. You have stenographers, the firefighters, everybody that they want to escape into these bunkers to protect the so-called elite. The federal relocation arc near Washington, D.C. will reportedly serve as the emergency bunker for every cabinet department and every government organization deemed essential. Site R, a 700,000-foot facility inside Raven Rock Mountain near Camp David, will serve as a backup Pentagon. Peters Mountain near Charlottesville, Virginia, is the likely site for the nation's domestic spies to hide out. And then there's the 600,000 square foot complex inside Virginia's Mount Weather. It's expected to be the primary relocation site for the White House, the Supreme Court, and much of the executive branch. Incredibly, built inside of the mountain is a staffed 24 hours a day, 7 days a week facility. This self-contained facility contains, among other things, a hospital, a crematorium, a dining and recreational area, sleeping quarters, reservoirs of drinking and cooling water, an emergency power plant, a radio television studio, and a full-time police and fire department. There's even an office of presidency at the Mount Weather, which receives regularly top-secret national information updates from all these secret agencies in the government. Wait a minute here. Think about that. Did you really know that? How many people know that? A few reporters have reported it. The Washington Post, as I said earlier, there's reported on it. But most people don't realize the fact that there are probably, this is the estimation by people who studied it, and medias and journalists, about 50 of these bunkers spread throughout the United States. They're like shopping malls. And who are they for? They're not for you and me, the taxpayer, the people who pay the bill. They're for, in case of an emergency, the elite. The moneyed elite will escape underground. In 2014, Princeton University, along with Northwestern University, did a study of 2 decades of policies passed in Washington, D.C., federal government policies. The conclusion they came to after 20 years of studying policies, that the American voter has no input, virtually none. These professors concluded that we are run in this country, we are ruled by a moneyed elite An oligarchy, they called it. Think about that for a second. And this oligarchy, where are they going to go if there's a catastrophe in the United States, a major terrorist attack, an invasion or whatever? They're going to go underground and hide. What happens to you or me, folks? Are they thinking about us? Obviously not. They're not telling us. I don't have the escape plan. When 9/11 happened, they said the line of limousines, this is a reporter reported this, outside of Mount Weather, escaping to the underground bunker, was 3 or 4 miles long. The elite was escaping. What was going to happen to us? This raises a real serious question. Why is the government so paranoid that they're worried that there's going to be a rebellion? Some people don't like this. You're going to see some people getting upset about this. They may want to get out in the streets. Did you realize, and most people don't realize this, that there is a database, the federal government actually admits this, of over 8 million names, that says as of several years ago, of people, dissidents, that will be rounded up in times of emergency? Wait a second. People who get upset, want to get out there and fight, we're already on a list to be taken away. And where to? People say there's no such thing as the internment camps. Well, as has been documented, George W. Bush, as president, gave the Halliburton Corporation $385 million to start building them. Did they spend the money or did they throw it away? Did they flush it down the toilet, folks? I think they probably spent it, but where are the internment camps? As I'm told by some former Secret Service agents, they're probably on military bases. So we could be rounded up. But are we going to be in those secret bunkers? No. What does this tell us about our so-called government in Washington, D.C.? Does it really represent us? Does it care about us? As the very insightful satirist George Carlin once said, what you have in Washington, D.C. is a club, and you ain't a member, folks. So what do we do here? What I'm telling people is, obviously we can't have a big impact in Washington, D.C., but folks, we can have an impact on the local level. You can get down to your city council meeting. You can get together with your friends. And this is going to take getting them off your butts and getting active. And turning off those screen devices, occasionally anyway. Getting together with your friends, picketing, getting on city councils, and sending a message to Washington, D.C. that we don't like this kind of stuff. You can send back the militarized equipment your police have, which will be used against you in times of emergency. You can do a lot of things, but you're going to have to get active. The clock is ticking. There are a lot of people saying there's an apocalypse coming. That may be true. But the people who run the government are going to escape the apocalypse. So get active, get in your government, and it's time to tell those people in Washington, D.C., hey, think about us once. We're paying the bill, folks, and we are the government. You're supposed to be representing us. For more information about the Rutherford Institute, visit us at www.rutherford.org.